charge of international cooperation of our university. As we all know, sustainable development requires changes in global thinking, and a key role in this, in ensuring these changes is played by the education. Therefore, universities are also very actively involved in this work. Of international cooperation of our university. Sorry. As we all know. And just yesterday, there was a webinar of the International Association of Universities on the topic integrating the Sustainable Development Goals in higher education. And the leading expert of this session also shared their experience and emphasized the role of shaping the consciousness of the younger generation with a sustainable development worldview. Our Northeastern Federal University has identified the sustainable development of the North as the key topic of our development strategy for the next decade. And my colleague, the Vice Rector for Strategy, will explain about it in more details. So just organizationally, I just want to add that there is a live broadcast of our conversation in YouTube and on the website of our forum in both languages, Russian and English, thanks to our translators. And I'm very grateful to our colleagues for responding to participate in our roundtable, and especially to our dear friend, honorary professor of our university, president of the University of the Arctic, Lars Kullerud. So please, Lars, you have the floor, and I ask you to start and moderate our roundtable.
Thank you, Vladlen. This is a great honor also for me to be here. And as you point out, system development goals is essential way of expressing the role of universities and the university operations in the Arctic and elsewhere in the world. And I look forward to this session to learn what people do around, and I will also in the end share a little thing about UArctic and system development goals. So I would like to therefore first introduce Professor Diana Herzberg from University of Alaska Anchorage, also now Associate Vice President of Education of University of the Arctic. So Diane, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to hopefully successfully share my screen with you all. And can you see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So I'm going to talk, it's a little bit about what I think we should be doing as much as what we are doing, although I will say this is work based on work that my colleagues and I are starting to do, which is to really look at how we need to think about education research that is focused on building sustainable development in the Arctic. And of course, sustainable development in the Arctic is a topic that is being discussed quite broadly. There are a number of books and reports that have been released on this topic in the last few years. The European Union is discussing the importance of sustainable development in the Arctic, and of course, the Arctic Council has its Sustainable Development Working Group. But where is education research in this conversation? And I keep looking to see who is critically exploring what does it mean to engage in developing the knowledge and skills needed so that communities can achieve their own goals in terms of sustainable development. And so, you know, the Sustainable Development Goal around quality education talks about achieving inclusive and quality education. And we do see education mentioned in a number of conversations on sustainable development, but not in the way that I argue it should be looked at, again, in order to help northern communities achieve their goals. So as Sustainable Development Goal number 4, the UN calls education the key that will allow many other sustainable development goals to be achieved. But then it focuses on formal schooling attainment. And that's an important goal, but that's not something that necessarily supports sustainable development across the Arctic. Indeed, young people we've talked with as part of an Arctic Youth Sustainable Futures project tell us of how formal schooling is quite disconnected from the skills they need and their aspirations. In fact, we had one college student who said, it's hard taking classes she's never going to use. What is the point? Everyone says you have to do this, but she wants to spend her time learning to make baskets and use her traditional skills, and to do things that are more relevant back at home. And if you dig deep into the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the targets, the education target on sustainable development looks at global citizenship, which again fails to provide that substantive connection between education and sustainable development besides promoting the concept in words only. And if you look at how the UN proposes to measure education for sustainable development, it narrows it down to learning about environmental science and geosciences and very vague education for sustainable development. But again, it's not connected to a concrete definition of sustainable development for communities. And I would question how these indicators measure ways in which education moves communities towards sustainable development. These are important targets, but they aren't linked with a concrete definition of sustainability or a theory of change about how we create sustainable communities. And certainly there's no mention of doing research to identify whether these goals and indicators are going to help communities become more sustainable. And so we tend to see very narrow definitions of education in Arctic research efforts, whether it's the European Union, National Science Foundation in the US. Education is seen as a way to share the research that's been done, but not as the topic of research. Why should we be looking at education, in other words? The Arctic education community has a better sense of the centrality of education research in creating sustainability. So this is from the UArctic Congress 2018 declaration stating, we see education as the essential element in building a sustainable future for Northerners, strengthening their ability to determine their own futures and develop new knowledge that benefits both the North and the world. And this is a much more active conception of how education can create sustainability. But it still doesn't help us understand what it looks like. That's what we need to study and research. Too many Arctic researchers still see education as a way to disseminate their findings on Arctic sustainable development, rather than as the means for building the capacity of individuals and communities to respond to the dramatic changes they are facing. So I've been saying repeatedly, we need to reframe the role of education as a tool for sustainable development by building knowledge needed for resilience and adaptation amongst humans in the Arctic. So we need research on what is the role of education, both formal and informal, and expanding the capacity of Arctic residents to respond to the challenges of rapid social, economic, cultural, and environmental changes, and climate change, of course. We need research that looks at what human capacity development is needed. So the skills and knowledge, so that Arctic residents can develop, implement, and operate governance structures that move their communities toward greater self-determination. And we need research that helps us understand how education contributes to transforming the health, social services, and economic systems of the North, and it moves them then toward less dependence on outside governments and economies. So research really is needed to create resilient northern communities where there are residents that have many different areas of expertise to face the many challenges they face. That can be a mix of local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, Western scientific knowledges, but communities have to be able to figure out what knowledge is needed depending on what they want to do. Do they want a new water treatment system? Do they want a new ways to process reindeer for commercial sale? Or do they want to figure out how to contest a mine being built nearby or create more local grown teachers? So community's ability to achieve collective goals is directly related to education and human capacity building, but we don't tend to start from that perspective when we discuss resilience or well-being and sustainable development. So we really need to think about having our research driven by community needs and their interests in partnership with university researchers. And we need to ask, can we shift the focus of education research toward building knowledge and human capacity to achieve the goals of the community? And finally, again, we just have to change how we determine what is research, that we want to look at needs defined by community, and we want to co-construct with those communities the knowledge that we develop and the way that we share it, the way we transfer this knowledge. And I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. We will have a good time for discussion after all the presentations. So I would like to move on if there is no kind of desperate need for waving a hand. See none. Welcome, Gail Fondell from University of Northern British Columbia, and I guess it is somewhere middle of your night. So yes. We grab you in your sleep, kind of. The floor is yours.
Okay, and Jana, could you show my slideshow without the notes, just the slides? Great. Is it possible to just put it on for the slides?
Do you see?
Yes, but I see the slides off to the left and the speaking notes too. So we want to just be able to see the slides.
I see only the slides on my laptop. I don't know how to remove.
Are other people seeing everything?
I guess we can live with that.
Okay. Well,
I see you not. You don't see?
No.
I'm seeing the slides, but I'm seeing all the slides to the side and the speaking notes and everything else too, which I find distracting.
If Jana, you might want to reshare and look at a different screen because it shows two. I have that same problem on mine.
I don't.
I should have sent it to you as a PDF.
No.
Яна, включите разрешить редактирование, потом показ слайдов.
Спасибо.
Разрешить редактирование, потом F5 просто можно нажать.
F5 и все.
Где разрешить редактировать?
Наверху желтым есть разрешить редактирование.
Почти в углу.
Дополнительное.
Нет, вот желтым же есть защищенный просмотр написано. И там сбоку есть разрешить редактирование.
Правый верхний угол. Вот большая кнопка.
Мне
Вот
не
он,
видно
вот он.
ее.
Okay, well, maybe it's not worth worrying about. Shall I go ahead?
I suggest you move ahead.
Okay, so anyway, and thank you for showing up, Jana. I want to thank you all for inviting UNBC to participate in the roundtable on behalf of Dr. Jeff Payne, who's interim president of UNBC. And I enjoyed being in Yakutsk last year for the first Northern Sustainable Development Forum, and wish I could listen to a little bit more, but because of the time difference, it's a bit difficult this year. Second slide, please. Jana, could you change to the second slide?
The slide I have switched it.
Okay, I'm not seeing any switch. Are other people seeing the switch?
Яна, наверху написано «Разрешите редактирование, пожалуйста». Вот нажмите на это.
Тут почему-то не по...
Видите желтым? Желтым защищенный просмотр смотрите? Видно? Яна? Вот да,
Желтым.
все. Все,
Perfect.
отлично.
Wow.
Yes. Okay, great. So anyway, I want to start by acknowledging that I'm speaking today from the unceded territory of the Lheidli T'enneh, on which the main campus of UNBC is located. And the Lheidli have lived here and stewarded their land for millennia, and they've done so sustainably. And we at UNBC are grateful to work and teach and learn and live on their territory. Our motto at UNBC is in Lheidli, and it is Enchahuna, which means, it translates into a call for respecting all life. And this idea articulates well with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We take sustainability seriously at UNBC, we discuss it regularly, and we strive to use it in our teaching, research, and operations. Slide 3. I guess I don't have control there, do I? In the short time I have today, I'd like to focus on some of the concrete ways that UNBC is contributing to several of the Sustainable Development Goals in the core activities of universities, teaching and research, and also in our operations. And these three, of course, are intertwined. UNBC is a relatively new university. It's chartered 30 years ago and opened its main campus 26 years ago. And it's a small university of about 4,000 students or less. And in its short history, it's established a reputation as being one of the best small universities in Canada in terms of both teaching and research. Slide 4, please. And I'll start with operations and then discuss research and teaching. UNBC is Canada's green university, and that's a trademark that we adopted as we installed a bioenergy plant on the main campus in 2011. And this was the first North American university to do so. The campus is heated by wood waste from a local sawmill. And this move to bioenergy reduced our fossil fuel consumption by 85%. Our main campus, which is shown here in the aerial photo, houses about 4,000 persons, students, professors, staff, which is the approximate size of many small northern communities. So UNBC is not only heating itself with bioenergy, but it's test driving one innovative renewable energy technology that's relevant for small communities in the Taiga zone, which have access to waste wood and want to reduce their use of fossil fuels, including diesel. Next slide, please. Addressing climate change has been a key priority of UNBC, as called for by Sustainable Development Goal 13. As noted, the bioenergy plant contributes to that. The university has also attracted and supported leading researchers with a focus on northern climatic change, specifically around glacier loss and related hydrological changes, which is important because hydropower provides over 85% of British Columbia's electricity. Given our location in the boreal forest, we also have developed a strong research forest on understanding the adaptation, health, and productivity of northern BC's forests related to climate change. Next slide. Innovative infrastructure is a sustainable development goal in itself and also one way of addressing climate change. UNBC has initiated a wood innovation and design center with the goal of increasing the use of wood in construction to reduce our carbon footprint. The center's main building is a 6-story wood construct, one of North America's taller wood buildings. And like the bioenergy plant, the facility itself serves as a proof of concept of what can be done with wood. UNBC has also initiated an engineering program with a focus on wood engineering. Most of these kinds of engineering programs disappeared from North America over the past half century, though they remain in Scandinavia and elsewhere. Through research and teaching, we'll further refine our understanding of the multiple uses of wood construction while preparing a new generation knowledgeable in wood construction, and in this way deal with climate change. Next slide, please. Next, I'll talk a little bit about inclusion. Approximately 12% of the population of Northern BC is First Nations. And among First Nations, completions of university and post-education in general is low. Generations of inequalities, equitable treatment have marginalized the population. UNBC is working towards a more inclusive and equitable education for BC's and Canada's Indigenous populations in line with Sustainable Development Goals 4 and 10. It's developed programmings to improve the recruitment and retention of Indigenous students and also non-Indigenous students from remote northern communities who are first-generation university attendees. We've worked to increase Indigenous content in our courses across the university. We've also introduced experiential learning opportunities, and the lower picture here shows a birch bark canoe that the students built as part of a course. Next slide. And I want to highlight especially our innovation in addressing the systemic racism that's within education and nursing and medicine. So we're trying to get beyond this and educating tomorrow's professionals. Our medical school faculty includes a research chair who, working with Indigenous partners, develops sensitivity training curricula for future doctors and other medical workers to help them to better understand how to effectively and respectfully communicate with Indigenous patients in a culturally appropriate manner. Our education program includes training of teachers in specific challenges and approaches to educating Indigenous children from a range of backgrounds and with different learning styles, and again, in ways that are culturally appropriate. UNBC co-manages a research forest with Claston Nation, and our forestry program curriculum incorporates training provided by elders on how to deal respectfully with forest management issues on First Nations lands. So all this contributes to addressing Sustainable Development Goals 4 and 10. And last slide, please. So northern universities have a specific responsibility to the northern populations that they serve, and I would argue also a specific responsibility to the environments in which they're located. Our universities have a responsibility to address the Sustainable Development Goals through teaching and research, but we can also do this through our operations. I provided a few examples of how our university, UNBC, is addressing some of the major sustainability challenges that face northern communities while building capacity among future generations to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. And UNBC will continue to highlight the importance of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and to use these goals to map out the directions of and investments in future teaching, research, and our operations. Thank you very much. Masicho and spasibo za vнимание.
Thank you, Gail. This is for a perspective from the woods in North America. Really good. We move on to the next speaker. Vasily Savinov, you are the Vice Rector for Strategic Development at Northeast Federal University. And I really look forward to hear your presentation. So the floor is yours.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Hello, dear colleagues. I would like to greet you on behalf of the Northeastern Federal University. Can you hear the translation?
I do have an issue with the translation here, if it is.
Позвольте вам представить выступление и открыть презентацию.
So now I would like to start and to open my presentation. So the title of my presentation is University Intellectual, Innovative and Spiritual Platform for Sustainable Development of Northern Territories. I represent Northeastern Federal University. There are 10 of such universities in Russia, and we are located in so-called geostrategic territories. Here you can see the territory where our university is located. It's huge, almost 1/5 of Russia, Yakutia, Magadan, Kamchatka, and Chukotka. If you look at our university, it is not very large, some 20,000 students and 1,500 academic staff. We train students at 12 institutes and 5 faculties. We have 2 colleges, then we have school education at the University Lyceum, and we have some academic institutes. In addition, the university has 3 branches in Nerungri, Another, and Mirny. Just recently, last week, a national program for the Far East development was adopted, and in March, they adopted the fundamentals of the state policy of the Russian Federation in the Arctic until 2035. And our university in these conditions had to adopt its development program, and this development program is based on these 2 quite serious program documents of national importance of Russia. But when we were elaborating our development program, we based on some restrictions. The first one is the extreme natural and climatic conditions. Then quite complicated living conditions. Unfortunately, the living standards of our population in the north is lower than that on average in Russia. We are in the conditions that are typical of small numbered population, and also we witness the outflow of population. And as you know, we are in remote conditions from some scientific, academic, and cultural centers of Russia. We are quite hard to reach, and that's why we understand that we had a lot of limitations. Also, we understood that there were some factors that influenced the development of any universities of the world. Primarily, we've been witnessing the growing uncertainty of social and political processes. We see the growing interest in the natural resources of the North, and also how we educated was not in great demand in modern conditions, because this knowledge becomes outdated very quickly. So this rapid rate of knowledge obsolescence. We believe that these 4 factors influence the development of our university, and that is why we approach the ideology, the concept of sustainable development, and the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And our shift to this ideology also preconditioned that we used this approach that is based on the interests of 3 circles. The first one is sustainable society, when we understand that there are different social groups with their own values, traditions, and interests. Then a sustainable environment that we have to preserve for the future generations. And that's what we have to take into account in our development. And thirdly, sustainable economy of the North. Economy should not only mine and exploit, but it has to allow the population to live in good conditions and to have high living standards. So these three circles, three domains, they laid the foundation for the adoption of our development program. This program is, starting next year, we will launch the new development program. And the transit to the ideology of sustainable development allowed us to reshape our mission. And we see it as a training of new generation of professionals that is based on the interests and goals of sustainable development, and who are ready to contribute their knowledge and skills to solve global changes. So the changes that we are witnessing now, climatic and natural and social, they demonstrate that our graduates have to be ready to protect the interests of Northern Territories and to leave these territories not only for themselves but the future generations as well. And we decided that first of all, our graduates have to be responsible. So the first quality is responsibility for preserving the territories. Then the second quality is will, the ability to solve the tasks and to be ready to contribute as much as possible to the development of the North. And thirdly, which is mandatory for our students, is diligence, because we understand that no solutions can be implemented without diligence. And so the development of our university is based on 5 tasks. The first one is social responsibility. University has to be responsible. Then secondly, the priority of people's interests. We have to contribute all our knowledge and skills to protect the interests of the people who live in the North. And the university has to combine the knowledge and skills acquired by the students with education, science, and research. And the pandemic has demonstrated that the university has to transform into the digital domain. And you saw on my first slides that we have limited resources. We should invest them into some final results, not just to waste them, but to invest them in the results in the future. That is why we have these 3 positioning models. The first one, the university as a major research and educational center. Then secondly, a so-called big university, which is a consortium of different education and research organizations. And then thirdly, the Center of Science and Research in the northeast of Russia. That is why we want to cooperate with you in various associations and consortiums. The next speaker after me is a representative of the North Arctic Federal University, who's a coordinator of the National Arctic Scientific and Educational Consortium, the president of the University of the Arctic, and we want to have more such associations and consortiums, and this is the only way to solve the tasks that the Northern Territories face, which is very fragile to the changes. When we made this decision, we didn't clearly understand whether we would be supported by our staff and some outside stakeholders. But before the forum, we surveyed our internal stakeholders, and this survey demonstrated that our efforts to implement the mission of sustainable development of the North are supported some 67% of inside stakeholders and 68% of outside stakeholders, which means that we have great support of solving these tasks of sustainable development. We are very glad that we are supported by the agencies and authorities and population and industry. I've seen a very interesting research and experience of our colleagues, and we have also prepared a similar report that shows the research and educational programs that are implemented at our university. I think that you will get this presentation later, and through this link that you can see a full version of the report and where we can cooperate. So thank you very much, and good luck, and I think that in the future we can cooperate all together.
Thank you. This was a very good intervention. I know that you're supposed to leave us, if I understood right, a little early from the discussion. So I have a comment and then a question, if that's allowed. My comment is maybe an information to everyone else in this call, that a few years back in UArctic we did a circumpolar study on which institutions do the most and do what kind of research on Arctic issues, and we defined the Arctic to be the Arctic Council Arctic, and the university that produced the most Arctic research is University of Alaska Fairbanks. But if we include Russian language literature, the number 2 in the world of universities is Northeastern Federal University. So you are by far a strong research institution on Arctic research, and you should be very proud of that. And maybe your networking can increase the number of English language scientific publications from your university, and through that you may also compete with University of Alaska Fairbanks in being the biggest one in the world on Arctic research. So that's something that people don't necessarily guess, but I think it's very important to tell the world. This analysis of your situation is really good and very teaching. You had a list of limiting factors, like living standards, small populations, and remoteness. So my question would be, how can one turn such a limiting factor into becoming an asset, an advantage, rather than a limiting factor for your university, but equally applicable to many of the other northern universities around the Arctic?
Владлен, он спрашивает про лимитирующие факторы? Вас не слышно.
Василий Михайлович, вы не подключили дорожку перевод на русский язык?
Я не подключил.
Подключите, пожалуйста. И еще раз тогда попросим переводчиков вернуться и повторить.
Не слышно. Все равно. Я не подключил в самом начале, видимо, поэтому... вот он.
Сейчас слышно перевод?
Вот, все, вижу. Сейчас, одну секунду. Все, включил. Да, очень хорошо слышно.
Maybe the translation.
Спасибо за вопрос.
Thank you very much for the question. In 1 hour, we are launching a forum on the competitiveness of Russian universities, where we are going to discuss to what extent our Russian universities are competitive under the pandemic. I've been preparing for this forum, and I concluded that our restrictions make our assets, because we have small population, and we were ready to invite the leading experts of the world. We were always ready for cooperation. And because we are not very numerous, we always value the people who make a valuable contribution to the development of the university. We value everybody, every person. Thirdly, due to this significant climate changes and this human impact on the northern territories, we are always ready to conduct the research of how they are happening. We have a lot of longitudinal research that began back in 1950s and 1960s, and we can see how nature and climate have changed and the landscapes have changed. So our restrictions and weaknesses, they have currently become our assets, our strong points. That's what I wanted to say.
Spasiba, thank you. Vladlen, you are taking over sharing now.
Thank you. So our next speaker is from our partner university, partner organization among the federal universities from Archangelsk, from Northern Arctic Federal University, Deputy Vice for Academic Affairs, Sergei Sorokin. Please, you have floor. Thank you for your contribution. Sergei, are you here?
Dear participants of the Roundtable, I am pleased to welcome you on behalf of the Northern Arctic Federal University and personally from the rector, Elena Kudryshova. And the topic that is being discussed today is very important because modern universities can make a significant contribution to the achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals. Currently, universities have gone beyond their two fundamental missions, educational and scientific, and are actively developing the so-called third mission, which is related to the activities in the public interest. The implementation of the third mission of universities includes several main areas, and you can see them in my presentation. In my opinion, almost all the goals of sustainable development are directly combined with the key areas of university activities for the implementation of the third mission, and this work should be considered in unity and in a common context. It is very important that many universities, including those located in the Arctic zone, have begun to fix the aspects related to the participation in the development of society in the strategic documents. And I can give you a few examples. For example, the University of Umia in its program document sees the third mission in supporting, on the one hand, a sustainable democratic society through its social commitments, and on the other, a competitive industry and commerce. The program document of the University of Copenhagen identifies priority areas in which it can be useful to society, overcoming global conflicts, development healthcare, ecology and climate change, migration issues, social problems in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals. The University of Iceland, in its development strategy, indicates the importance of implementing activities in the framework of the third mission. And in my research papers on the topic of the third mission, I also conducted a similar analysis in relation to Russian federal universities. And if we talk about the 3 federal universities located in the Arctic region of the Russian Federation, Northern Arctic Federal University, Northeastern Federal University, and Siberian Federal University, their development programs also reflects issues related to participation in the development of regions and microregions, and particularly the Arctic. I will say a few words about the work being done by the Northern Arctic Federal University in terms of implementing the sustainable goals directly in the context of work in the Arctic. This work is very large scale, so I will give you just a few examples. Of course, the goal quality education is the closest to us, and today the university not only provides training in educational programs, but also actively implements the concept of lifelong learning. Today we have more than 200 additional educational programs for people for all ages, from children to pensioners. The Arctic Floating University project contributes to the implementation of the goal Life Below Water. It has been implemented at the university since 2012, and this is an innovative, complex scientific and educational expedition that conducts research in the field of hydrometeorology, hydrology, biology, geology, archaeology, and others. In total, 12 expeditions were conducted, in which more than 600 participants took part, including about 300 students from various universities in foreign countries: Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Germany, France, Spain, Iceland, USA, Canada, Brazil, and Switzerland. The project of students' Arctic cleaning teams contributes to the implementation of the goal Life on Land. In 2014 and 2017, this group was engaged in cleaning up man-made garbage on the island of Alexandra Land and the archipelago of Franz Joseph Land. The team collected about 350 tons of garbage and performed ecological work on the Hooker and Hayes Islands. These events are part of our work to implement the third mission of the university. I know that many universities, and in particular Northeastern Federal University, also pay great attention to the implementation of the third mission, and they have many interesting projects in this direction. It should be noted that the activities of universities in the field of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals are reflected in a number of international ratings, in particular in the Times Higher Education ratings. And since 2019, the Times Higher Education University rating is published, which focuses on the role of universities in implementation of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The rating highlights 11 indicators that fit into the field of activity of modern universities and actually correspond to the task of implementing the third mission. You can see them in my presentation. And in the ranking, universities are ranked not only in general, but also for each of the 17 indicators of the Sustainable Development Goals. So as a conclusion, I would like to indicate the following. The implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals should be considered in the context of the implementation of the third mission of universities. most of the Arctic universities are actively involved in this work. It is necessary to coordinate actions, including the exchange of best practices between Arctic universities, and it may make sense to create a platform dedicated to this point on the basis of any of the existing structures or create a new one. And the problems of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in the Arctic should be the subject of serious scientific research involving scientists from the Arctic states. So thank you for attention.
Thank you, Sergey. I agree with you that this third mission policy of our Russian universities maybe makes the successful result of these in this THA new ranking on the impact of on achieving of sustainable development goals, because Russian universities have this third mission as a very important mission in our activities. Thank you so much. So our next speaker is a researcher from the Reykjavik University Sustainability Institute and Forum from Iceland. Magnus David, please, you have the floor.
Hello and welcome. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can see.
So my name is Magnus David and I'm a PhD candidate at Reykjavik University. And my presentation today will be split into two parts. First, I will introduce Reykjavik University and the Sustainability Institute and Forum. And then I will give you some first-hand data, practical information from my own research, which is focused on the energy transition in remote Arctic communities. So the Sustainability Institute and Forum at Reykjavik University was founded in December of 2017, and the focus is on research on sustainable development, low carbon technologies and projects. And we try to this overreaching goal is to provide evidence-based information to policymakers, and therefore we do a lot of research, and we try to preserve the unique nature in Iceland and the ecological system, but also we focus also on issues outside of Iceland. And at Reykjavik University, a strong focus is on energy, on sustainable energy, and in particular on geothermal energy, which is due to the unique location and the long-lasting experience, but as well on other energy sources. And my background is in energy, and my research is on the energy transition in remote Arctic communities and how we can shift from diesel to some renewable energy resources. And that was very interesting. When I started, I was really focused on the goal number 7 on clean energy. And later on, it came for me a more wider picture that it's also a very important part of affordability. That was very interesting for me to see when I was in contact with locals, that affordability was very important, but also we are touching other goals like the first one, no poverty, or goal number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So I don't know how familiar you are with energy in remote Arctic areas, but currently we can see that approximately 80% of the communities which are remotely located in the Arctic, which have no connection to an over-regional electricity grid, are entirely dependent on diesel, on fossil fuels. Then we can find a few hybrid systems which have a combination of renewable energy resources and diesel. This is approximately 14%, and a small community, a small portion of the communities have just hydropower as energy resource. But this data are just based on the Western Arctic, so I'm not sure how it's in the Russian Arctic. And all the fuel is imported to these communities, and that's very expensive and risky, but I will come to it on my next slide. But a question in the beginning for me was, why is diesel so dominant in the Arctic? And it's very it has proven suitable over the last decades, and it's very easy to store a lot of energy in a very small amount, and it's easy to store the energy over a long period. And the other reason is you can use a diesel generator as a backup source and start it in a very short time. So it's very suitable for emergency generators as well. As we can see in Iceland, in some regions, we have emergency diesel generators if some problems are occurring in the grid. So here we have a very interesting picture. That's the most uncommon way of transporting diesel to communities. That's by airplane. It's the most expensive one. The other options are to barge it in on ships or deliver it over ice roads during the winter time. But due to climate change, ice roads are getting more and more unstable. But all this fuel transportation bears a high risk for fuel spills, and you can see or imagine if you have this very complex and transport, you have high expenses. And as you can see later on, it will reflect to the fuel prices. And of course, you have high risk of transportation, and you have the black carbon, CO2, and other greenhouse gas emissions, which are not very good for our environment. So, as I mentioned before, I was touching also some other factors, and that's one very interesting slide for me. When I was reading the literature, I always saw in Arctic areas, the people have to spend a lot of their income on electricity. And here in this graph, I tried to figure out how much it is. But it was for me very interesting because first, as a person from the southern areas, I was starting with my mindset, and then I was talking to them, and then I realized I forgot to include some income which is from a non-formal economy. So how to include the subsistency lifestyle. And then I try to make some assumptions for the harvest they have per annual, and also calculate it into the net income. But we can still see on this picture that the spendings on energy are very high. And that's a huge burden for the local people who are living there. And that's why I researching how renewable energy can affect this and lower the cost for the locals, so make it more affordable. And here on this slide, we have some very common energy resources, which we can find in different Arctic communities. For example, for a solar plant, that's a test site in Nuuk, Greenland, a hydro plant in Nuuk, a wind farm in Kotzebue, Alaska, and the battery storage on the top left. It's also in Kotzebue, Alaska. And this is they have already collected a lot of experience in some communities, and it's very interesting to see that actually really the energy prices are slightly dropping down over time. And that's why other communities where I was visiting, they are really into getting some renewable technologies. And for me, it was very interesting a few presentations ago from Yale to hear about the bioenergy site at the UNBC. It's very interesting to talk later a little bit about it with her. And when I was talking to the locals, for me it was very important that there is some involvement of the local communities in my research, because they know the areas as best. So I do 3 case studies, and therefore it's really important to know the local people, how they are thinking about it. And one very interesting factor for me was when I was talking about wind turbines back home in Germany, where I'm from, all the people, they don't like the wind turbines because it spoils the view. But in the community where I was in Kotzebue, they were really happy because that was a symbol for energy change, for cheaper electricity. And of course, we can still see that a lot of technology development is needed, and we see that several universities are focusing on researching how technologies from southern areas can be adapted to be used in Arctic areas to survive or produce electricity in this condition and do it more efficiently. But also education, that's a very important factor, how to use energy resources in a sustainable manner, how to use it at home. And that's also very important that the locals have the knowledge about how to use these technologies. And of course, that's where my research comes in, the development of strategies or concept for the energy transition. And another thing which is very important is that energy can be used for economical growth. But this is always a two-edged sword, because if the economical growth happens, then there will be maybe some impact on the environment, or how will it be impact the traditional lifestyle in this community? How will it affect the social life in the communities? So there are also some pro and cons for energy transition or more and cheaper electricity. So that's also to take in consideration. And I think that's now my time limit. So thanks for your attention, and I hope we will have a fruitful discussion later on.
Thank you, Magnus. Dankeschön. I think they, excuse me. I think the energy topic is one of the main topics in the sustainable development. And every year here in Yakutsk, the governance of our republic is holding a large conference forum, specifically on energy in the Arctic and in the North, where various types of energy are considered, including renewable ones, and large energy companies participate in this forum. And as we know, in cooperation with our Japanese partners in companies in our high north in Tixi, there were windmills were constructed as one of energy projects. And I think it would be interesting for you to maybe sometimes to participate in this forum. So yes, thank you.
Very interesting. You can connect with this conference.
Okay, we will support in this issue. Thank you so much for your contribution, for your very interesting presentation. And we switch to Norway, to our colleague Igor Kodacek, researcher at North University Business School. Please, you have the floor.
Hello, or should I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, dear colleagues.
And even good night in Canada. Yes. Encourage.
And even good night. I wonder if you see my slides?
Yes, we can see very good.
Good, it's now on the screen. And thank you very much for inviting me to contribute to this roundtable. It's very interesting, and it's although it's I think institutionally focused on the role of universities, I think it would be nice to hear to switch to my perspective, where I mostly talk about the outputs of a smaller research team. And we know that this third generation of universities literature, third mission, tells us how the focus is shifted from big structures or big universities or corporations to networks and smaller teams, and what a small team, international team and network is capable of is that what I'll try to demonstrate today. So I have this double affiliation where I earned my PhD at North University Business School in Bodø, Norway, and I keep part-time position there, but I mostly work now for RANEPA, which is I think largest Russian or largest even European university, specifically focused on retraining and educating civil servants or public managers. For 3 years, I now reside in St. Petersburg, and you see it's unusually sunny here. So sorry for this bad light balance on the camera. I will thus talk about Smart North research project and several spin-off initiatives, networking and education, which are focused on sustainability of northern smart cities. And we know this fuss about smart cities, and we as social science researchers are specifically interested in knowing how this may contribute to sustainability. So that's the overview of the presentation. Basically, I will talk about the project, the research project, preliminary results, outputs and learning points, or findings, and then two spin-off initiatives. One is Smart Societies Thematic Network of UArctic, and the second one is EduSmart project, which is to commence next year. So what was the idea of the project? We know that High North is full of opportunities, and that's no need to say that the big discussion about how we should treat these opportunities sustainably. And thus it brings challenges that with economic growth and with enhanced oil and gas activities, we have depopulation and, so to say, governance paradox. And governance paradox, it is about the decisions, how the decisions about High North are made. That we know that there is a big talk about engagement and participation of local communities, but more and more decisions are actually made on the High North, are made within headquarters of large corporations and capitals of countries. So basically the decisions about High North are not made in High North, but in Moscow or Oslo or or Brussels, for example. So how to secure long-term sustainable development in the High North or of the High North? What the main motivation, the main issue that we were concerned with? And we know about these challenges from the Business Index North. That's the annual index Nuuk University makes, and it is full of statistics about High North regions. But we also know that smart city moves towards High North, and smartness, smart initiatives, they promise participation, and in the discourse they are connected with sustainability issues. That smart city is a city which is technology rich, like smart transport, smart mobility, or smart living, smart housing, smart governance and participation. That's what the basic definition says. However, it also has its own pitfalls, and we were really curious how in reality, empirically, smart city and participation agendas, how they come intertwined, how they become integrated, and what outcomes this creates in terms of city governance. So the project is financed by Research Council, and it is about to end in December. That's very basically about the project timeline, and it's international in terms of the project team. We have researchers in I think 4 countries. So we had Andreas Rasputnik in North America. Now he's moved to Norway, although I think currently due to the coronavirus he is in Austria. And as a preliminary, as a first stage, the first phase 1 of the project, we started mapping these initiatives, and we arrived to this kind of map. I think I'm switching to the next slide, but I see that it hasn't switched yet. Yeah, now that's a map. Very brief map where we have found smart city or participatory governance initiatives in the High North regions. And you see that some of the points are in the Russian Far East, and according to the Russian legislation, we should treat these territories as High North regions. They are, so to say, equivalent because of harsh conditions and both socially and environmentally vulnerable places. So what we have arrived to as a preliminary findings, we have found or unveiled several ways of translation of smart city to the high north. Because if we know the drivers, what brings a smart city to the high north, whether it's commercial initiatives, whether it's governance framework, or is it local initiatives, that's important. So we have diverse translation patterns of how smartness comes to the high north. And we start with networks in Norway. Regions communicate in networks, cities communicate in networks, and basically the north learns from the south. Then in case of Finland, we have external projects such as European Smart Initiative and this EU initiative. We have ranking competitions in North America, Canada, and Alaska. Smart City Challenge, that was very interesting to know that basically cities try to understand who is smarter, and they participate in this kind of challenge, Smart City Challenge competitions. And in Russia, it came out that we have found top-down centralized version, like the federal standard of smartness, which prescribes how smart city should look like. And the generalized conclusion that with few exceptions, we have found the gap between participatory initiatives, participatory governance, and smartness. So basically, they are not that much integrated as the theory, as the literature says. And the diversity of practices across countries, it says that overall the discourse and the initiatives, they are dominated by technocratic vision rather than human-centric or citizen-centric approach to sustainability. And this, of course, makes us puzzled, because we know that this paradox in smart city is that on one hand we eliminate people, human factor, and on the other hand we should enhance the human factor. We should add citizens or humans to decision making, and we should remove them from the areas where the human factor is unnecessary and or like better to avoid. And we see that this technocratic vision, the domination of technocratic vision, is similar for all contexts, but the diversity of practices also suggests some interesting ideas. So having this in mind, we started this, briefly about the outputs. Formally, like we have research papers, 9 research papers, 8 newspaper chronicles, and this important professional architecture journal special issue. So we tell the architects how we think smart city should look like, and how we think it could look like if we see the domination of human-centric initiatives, which is a favorable scenario. And here, architects, especially young architects, who are the main audience of the journal, they were really inspired by this material that we used. So, having this in mind, this a bit critical view, a bit critical stance towards smartness and how we see its unfolding in the high north regions, we have suggested the thematic network on smart societies, and we started communicating and disseminating our results through this network, and also, so to say, balancing our view of how to promote our findings and how to make them sustainable. And that's basically how the thematic network works in terms of the impact chain. And the second output, or the second spin-off initiative, so to say, was this EduSmart project, which is, as I said, to commence in 2021, where we will focus on management education and management and governance education, how to deliver our critical stance to the education programs and courses, and specifically for retraining for civil servants, how to make governance and management of cities in the high north sustainable. And we have large networks of partners. Here we also have China, East China Normal University in Shanghai, and we have a diverse network of partners in Russia, and we really hope that in 3 or 4 years we will see first outcomes of how the critique of the current smartness patterns, how it helps us to prepare new generation of future-oriented jobs and future-oriented managers, so to say, especially public sector managers. And briefly, that's how we say we contribute to sustainable development goals about cities, making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. We promote sustainable economic growth through new type of or new future-oriented jobs, especially for future-oriented jobs, and institutional aspect as well. So we strengthen partners between countries and between institutions, and most important, we facilitate work of teams and not only among researchers or teachers, but also between civil servants and public sector managers. Basically, that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm ready for questions.
Thank you. So the questions we will have later. We have the last speaker, and thank you for joining us, Professor Hans Adolfsson, Vice Chancellor of Umeå University, Sweden. Please take the floor.
Hey, thank you very much for the invitation to come here and speak to you. I hope that you can hear me. If you do, please nod. Yeah, excellent. Yes. I will share some slides with you as well regarding the activities we have made in and from Umeå with regards to sustainability and reaching the sustainable development goals of the UN. And hopefully you can see my presentation at the moment as well. What I will stress in my presentation today is really that collaboration is something that we really need to focus a lot on, and something that we need to develop if we want to actually go and seriously go further towards a sustainable development. So that's really sort of the topic of my talk. And what you see on the first slide here is simply just a view of the campus area at Umeå University. So what I would like to do then is to give you some insights on the university. It was founded in 1965. I think this was the 5th university in Sweden at that time. We had a number of other university colleges, but this was the 5th university founded. So a little bit more than 50 years old at the moment. We're a comprehensive university covering everything, I would say, from art in the humanities and arts faculty to medical training of doctors in our medical faculty. So we're consisting of 4 different faculties. We're about 33,000 students studying at the university and about 4,000 people employed here. The vision of the university that the board of the university actually took a decision on just a year ago is focusing very much on these 3 aspects: responsibility for the future, collaborative knowledge development, and competitive edge and pride. And I would say that at least the 2 first ones are really connected to the SDGs of the United Nations. And if you look upon them, I mean, you can divide them up into these 3 levels, the biosphere, the society, and the economical level, as you see on the slide to the left here. The responsibility for the future is, of course, something that we as a university can contribute to actually take steps towards reaching the goals of the individual SDGs. But if we want to do that, we also need to do that in collaboration. Taking the individual goals, of course, is one thing, but if we then combine efforts over several goals, we can take significant steps forward as well. And that really comes down to the collaborative knowledge development as well. So I will go through some initiatives that we have done, both on the local plan within the university, also what we have done with the community in the regional session, I would say, then national, and then also international. So I will give you a few examples of things that we're working on. And starting out by research and education at Umeå University, Of course, climate actions and climate research is very important. And we run a research facility up in Abisko in the north of Sweden, known as CIRC, the Climate Impacts Research Center, where we study changes in the climate. And this is, of course, something that you will note a lot up in the high north region, where climate changes is something that is very dramatic, and we can really see them up front and know exactly what's going on there. Our School of Business, Economics and Statistics have also been very eager in working with the SDGs of the United Nations, and they actually ran a project known as 17 Goals in 17 Weeks, taking one goal at a time to illustrate what these are all about for students and for people at the university, and to focus on them, just to bring light on them, and then also to see how you can combine issues and combine efforts in order to tackle these. We're very much involved in health and medical research, and one example is the Zika plan action, where we study the Zika virus and look upon how this affects people all around the world, especially South America in that case. And then, of course, energy is really something that we focus a lot on as well. And Sweden being a country with lots of forests, then it comes natural to look upon forest as a renewable energy source, and what can you do with the forests in a larger sense. But also at the university, at our campus sites, we're looking at alternatives, how we can actually make the campus area, I would say, more sustainable. And we have been recently putting up solar panels on a number of our buildings, and that is done in collaboration with the landlord, which owns the building of our university. To continue then, another initiative that we have taken at the university is actually a bottom-up approach from a number of researchers at the university who formed what they call the Umeå Transformation Research Initiative. And it's really something where we, as I say, collaboration is important. And if we wanted to tackle the SDGs, we can't do them one by one. We need to do that in collaboration and look upon the challenges of society and to cluster them together and see how can they be clustered in a proper way, and how can we interdisciplinary run research programs that will take us through to the future and really make this transformation that we need to go through in society. And this is something which is recently started, and it looks very promising, because what I see is that there's a big interest from our researchers from all the different, all our 4 different faculties, to really look into the major challenges that we see in the future. So this is something that you for sure will see more about in the future. When it comes to the regional activities of the university, we have a close collaboration with a number of strategic partners regionally. 2 municipalities, Umeå, where we are situated, and then also the municipality of a neighboring city known as Örnsköldsvik, where we do a number of different collaborative issues and activities, as well as with the county of Västerbotten, where Umeå is situated, and also with the private sector, one company which I'm quite sure that all of you know about, the Volvo, who's making truck cabs in Umeå. And it's rather interesting what we do with Volvo is that since they're looking very much into circular economy these days, that's something where we as a university can come in and contribute with our knowledge and how we can work together in solving various problems for them, and then also to exploit that into research in our own capacity of the own university. And then together with the municipality of Umeå, then we're working on what Igor just presented for us, the smart city, and Umeå has been one of the cities in a smart city project sponsored by the European Union, together with Glasgow and Rotterdam. And this project, known as Ruggedized, looked upon how we can develop cities. And in Umeå, we focused a lot on public transportations and of course using smart technology in order to make the city more sustainable. I will go further and take a look at some national collaborations we have done in Sweden as well. And to the left, you see something which is an initiative taken by a few universities. It actually started with two of our universities in Sweden. It's the Royal Institute of Technology and Chalmers Institute of Technology, who sort of connected together a climate framework, which is now joined by most universities in Sweden, where we are setting up a number of different tasks that we would do in order to work towards sustainable development with regards to the climate. And when it comes to educational activities, then we're also running a program together with a number of universities known as Rethinking Higher Education. And this is it's a national conference. Actually, it's an international conference, so I guess anybody can join that one. But it has been going on now for I think the second one was now 2020. The first one was 2019, where we predominantly focus on our undergraduate students and how they can come in and take part in changing the educational system to look further into the Sustainable Development Goals. And this year it was supposed to be in Gothenburg, but due to the Corona pandemic, it had to be cancelled. But we are going to arrange this in Umeå, probably in 2021 or 2022, depending on whether it will actually be given in Gothenburg now in 2021 instead of the one that was cancelled. And then just to sum up or coming to the end of the presentation, I will take a little international perspective as well. And what we do in Umeå is that we have a strong international collaboration within what we call the Arctic Five. And the Arctic Five is consisting of 5 universities. It's Umeå University, where I am at. It's Luleå University of Technology in Luleå in Sweden. And then we have 2 universities in Finland. It's the University of Lapland in Rovaniemi, and it's the University of Oulu in Oulu. And then, of course, in Norway, we are collaborating with the University of Tromsø, the Arctic University of Norway. And in this Arctic Five collaboration, we look upon a number of issues that is really trying to tackle what happens in the north. And of course, renewable energy and environmental challenges is something, one of the topics that we look further onto. Health and welfare and life quality in the north is something that we look into. And then we also try to collaborate on educational system, especially teacher training in the north. And we are also running programs on the indigenous people, on the Sami people in the north. So that sort of summarize what we're doing with regards to the SDGs and how I think really that doing this in collaboration will help us really to push forward in this direction. So thank you very much.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation and your experience. So this was the last presentation and speaker. So Lars, we could start our questions and answer session and discussion. And maybe we can start with questions to Diana and to Gail, if they are still here, because the time in Anchorage and in Prince George is very late now. Thank you for your participation.
Maybe we should let the other participants first take priority on asking questions, and you can either raise hands or just start asking. There's a tool called raise hands if you look at the participant list to grab the floor. So are there anyone here with questions to North Americans, or questions from the 2 of you to the others? Maybe we should add that approach. Gail, did you want to say something? No.
I have a very small technical questions to Gail. You told about the educational programs for elders who teach. No, I mean about involvement of elders from traditional communities who teach to the students to respect nature and so on. How do you get them to work technically? On what kind of basis? Are they as academic staff, or are you just involving them for some lectures?
So it varies with the courses. We have individuals who are paid to teach different languages of Northern British Columbia, and they would be paid like a professor who was teaching Japanese or Spanish. And then we have individuals who come in and teach a single course, like a course on birch bark canoe construction, and that would be paid like a sessional, an individual who might come and teach a single math course or something. And then we also have courses where the students go out to the communities and spend 3 or 4 days as part of a forestry course to learn about natural resource management protocols for talking with elders or talking with community members when they're on First Nations land and they're talking about forestry there. So really there's several different models. And the other thing that we've been doing more of is having artists in residence, writers, totem pole carvers, other carvers, and so some of them are First Nation, some of them aren't, but that's another way of involvement and having a presence on campus.
Okay, thank you.
And I would guess that Diane could probably, include other examples from U of A too.
Yes, we actually some of our programs will have elders who are paid to participate in every class. Rural development courses, a friend of mine used to have a rural nutrition program, and in all of those, the elder was like a co-instructor to make sure that protocol was being followed in terms of the collaborations with the community, but also to provide knowledge that even Indigenous people who are just younger would not necessarily be able to bring into those classes. And at UA, that was up at UAF mostly. At UAA, we similarly have elders who are teaching Yupik language in particular, and coming in and assisting with some of our courses, and also just being there in some cases to support the Indigenous students, in our gathering places.
Maybe I can share a window and ask a question. First of all, it's such a pleasure to be in this meeting where you all are from UArctic member institutions, and you all are from very active UArctic member institutions. So that's really nice to observe. Diane and Sergey, you both kind of approach the issue of system development goals from a bit systematic approach for the goals themselves, while most other examples are really the concrete how universities approach these goals, use them as inspiration for transforming education and research and other activities. And I want to share a little preview because UArctic will launch its next strategic plan next year. And one of the things we have been striving with actually is this problem that the strategic system development goals, they are kind of written in a way where they may not be so relevant to the Arctic when you go into the details, as pointed out by Diane. And I think the 17 goals have some around 160 targets. Diane addressed a few of them. I've gone through them all and figured out if we stretch, half of them are Arctic relevant, but still they, as Diane pointed out, they measure a bit skewed relative to what would be important to Arctic. On the other hand, we, as Arctic, where you are the members and you decide in a way of what we are, in a new strategy, this is to become, but it was approved by the board yesterday, so we have a very early peak. Among the things we deal with, we have tried to formulate some impact ambitions for the next 10 years, which is on behalf of you as members of the Arctic, and use the same pyramid for the development goals as we've seen, and try to express then what should we have as a common ambition for the North, all of us together. So this is in a way how it will look like. But in the end, I at least personally have ended up with the conclusion that the way most of these presentations were, like you use the development goals as a way to inspire your work and influence your priorities, but not even trying to deliver on the targets and count these indicators precisely, might be more helpful for us in the Arctic. And maybe somebody else have different views on that. And so yeah, you have clearly done a very good job in looking at what other universities do around this topic too. So I would like to hear from everybody whether you have any suggestions or thoughts of the difference between using the goals as concrete indicators which you should measure versus more an inspirational tool which we then can frame and produce other targets and other indicators for what you do. So whoever wants to take the floor.
If I could jump in for a moment, we actually had a couple of very active conversations about this topic in Alaska. So this is not necessarily university focused, but this was both the Institute of the North and then our Arctic Frost project did some work around this with when we were at the UN Forum on Indigenous Peoples a couple of years ago. We did a presentation, but if I can share something very quickly, what we did mostly was a broad critique of from the different national and indigenous perspectives. And so I hope you can see the key takeaways slide, because this was the critique that in particular came from indigenous participants, that most of the language used in the Sustainable Development Goals don't represent the Arctic, and especially indigenous voice, that we want to try to, sustainable development is not just for developing states. And that was one of the concerns we had, was that most Arctic states fall outside the scope of development guidelines by those definitions. And yet we have regions in the Arctic that definitely are still developing and face many of the challenges. The concepts of local control, sovereignty, and self-determination are just not there whatsoever. And we felt concerned that there isn't a holistic look. I really appreciate actually the graphics that were shared today that begin to try to cluster those goals, because that gives it that more holistic sense than the way the UN has done it. But we still find that it has value because it's a framework that's globally agreed upon. So it's a question of what do we do differently. And in fact, we had some different and additional goals that we thought could be proposed as Arctic goals. And I wasn't able to put my hands on them here, but it is something that at some point it would be interesting to bring forward from a consortia of Arctic institutions to the UN.
It reminds me a little bit about the discussions we had when we were creating the Arctic social indicators, and that merging of both some of the UN ones, human development indicators, but the real need for Arctic specific ones that come from or informed by Arctic citizens, and as you mentioned, Diane, you know, self-determination was a big part of this. So I think this is one place where the University of the Arctic members could really contribute in terms of facilitating those discussions.
Would there be other comments around this? This is not meant to be unique for North America to discuss.
So I could add just from the point of view of institutional development of such discussions like our session, our roundtable. So our Northern Sustainable Development Forum will be held annually, and we would like to expand the participation, the geography, and the bring more speakers and researchers to this topic. And we would like to bring this topic about sustainable development goals and the role of universities in achieving these goals into the same, maybe in the separate platform, or maybe a separate project, since this is a really relevant and large topic. Vice Rector Savinov asked to apologize for him. He moved at 6:15 p.m. to the Russian National Conference, which is now taking place on the competitiveness of Russian universities at the national and global levels, which is also very important now. He also expressed his gratitude to you all and asked for all the presentation, since they are very interesting and useful, specifically for our work, and because our university, as already mentioned, has determined the sustainable development in the North as a key topic for the next strategy plan for the next decade. So from my side, I just want to thank all of you, and I agree also with Diana that the all research in the Arctic must be driven by the needs of the communities living in the Arctic. This is really very important. We also think about this approach in our educational programs and research. I was very impressed about the achieving the goals of the university UNBC in presentation of Gail, and innovation on building and construction, and using the innovations in forests, wood construction. And considering of our presentation of Vasily Savinov, we just want to get your approval of what we do on the level of this roundtable, and we hope that our program will be successful in the Russian national competition in academic leadership, which is going on in this academic year. And the third mission of Russian University, the topic made by Sergei, is really very important. We are also now participating in this TCHA ranking about the impact of universities. So Igor, it's really interesting about the research on smart cities. I think considering urbanization, including in the north, and the challenges of our time, this is certainly a very relevant topic. Our Yakutsk, which is built, constructed on permafrost, certainly needs such development, and we have IT park here and some ideas on how to develop the smart city technologies is also very important, and thank you for your contribution. And Professor Adolfson, your presentation was also very interesting, and I agree that the close integration and interaction of the university, strategic partners, companies and municipalities becomes important to achieve these sustainable development goals. So thank you so much for all your presentation. These are from my side, my comments. Please, we would be grateful for your comments and questions.
I agree with Vladlen that we have to continue our collaboration, and today we heard many good practices, and I think they all can be united maybe on some platform, and everyone will have access to this information, and I think it will be the first step for our collaboration, and maybe other people who will get acquainted with this information will join us, so our range will be wide. So our university is interested in continuing of this work.
Thank you. Some other comments or questions? Please feel free.
I just maybe minor comment. Thank you very much for facilitating this discussion, and it's really fruitful, and I believe it will become sustainable, and it will enhance sustainability of Arctic and High North. Maybe what is important not to neglect that actually research and cooperation is made not by big structures but by the teams. And I had an experience of being executive for a couple of years at RUNEP, and I know how these things are seen from the top, so to say, from the helicopter view. And sometimes they just think that it's very easy, and it's really uneasy to create a nice team and a productive team. And I think to become sustainable, universities need to take really critical stance on how they facilitate work, how they sustain work in teams. That's, I think, very important. And if we start with the networks ourselves, then how we convey this network approach to the bottom, so to say, to the ground. That's really not easy task, but I believe that we will be successful.
Lars here, I'm tempted to. Oh, sorry, you go first.
Yeah, if I just can join in on exactly what Igor just pointed out. I think it's very important to look at the actual researchers doing the job. If you take a university point of view, we've been, I mean, as a vice chancellor, you're quite used to having ideas that you want to pursue further, and that you want to sort of inspire getting things going. But the things that really survives and really goes and becomes sustainable, I would say, is when it's a bottom-up approach, when the researchers initiate things like that. And that's why I think it's so interesting to follow what we just launched at Umeå, the Umeå Transformation Research Initiative, really coming from the researchers themselves. So it's really a bottom-up approach. And I think if we can encourage more of these kinds of approaches, then we will also gain a lot. And we could do that in collaborations as well, and across universities. And I think that's really where we would see some strength really tackling the major societal problems as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I might jump in to say, and I'm thinking a lot about Magnus's work, because I'm also doing work around that relationship between renewable energy and sustainable development. And the researcher interests need to also be informed by, again, the communities, because in a project that we're doing that includes Kotzebue, but that is a partnership with University of Alaska Fairbanks, University of Alaska Anchorage, but led by University of Saskatchewan, and then Tromsø and Luleå. One of the important lessons is the communities don't always want us to come in and build renewable energy. Sometimes they want us to come in and retrofit buildings so that they are more energy efficient and better at withstanding the cold coming in from outside, and also that the development of the energy needs to be combined with something that Magnus was talking about. It's to what end, to what economic development purpose, because we have communities where we have built cutting edge wind and solar technology, and it is not functioning because the community did not see it as their energy system, their goal, connected to something that they were identifying as a purpose. And so really, truly, our great ideas still need to match what the communities desire, or we run the risk of running roughshod over communities that are often too polite to tell us to go away.
A very important reminder. I would like to follow up on this, the third mission or triple and four helix or whatever approach of the things you talk about. I think this idea that the core of research and innovation, particularly in sparsely populated Arctic, will by default be driven by pretty small groups of people. And our job is to make them meet and love each other and figure out how to do, and then enable that energy to exist with respect to the people and addressing real needs and not fake needs in a way, which comes as a value set on top. And that's been all of those addressed here today. And Hans mentioned, for example, a very strong collaboration between the Arctic 5 universities in Northern Scandinavia, which are all core members of UArctic, and I think this is showing how they can team up, put extra resources in, and create things to make things happen. One of your things there is like around teacher education. In UArctic, we have a teacher education thematic network, and your Arctic 5 teacher education is the same as really the UArctic teacher education, just that that is your Arctic 5 teacher education expanded to the Circumpolar North. And Diane sitting here is one of the vice leads of the Circumpolar teacher education. And Igor, you are running the Smart Cities initiatives, which I think is another example where you had tried to address and get with you people around the Arctic, which to address a very important issue in the Arctic, and that is we shall not all run a mine, we shall not all fish the big fish catches, or even do the mega tourism. But there is this innovation, the thing that produce good solutions that are relevant and can produce jobs and opportunities for the small communities and the bigger communities around the Arctic. And that's the role of the universities. And I think working together across borders, since we are not in a mega city, we need to rethink the concept of critical mass in a way. The critical mass exists virtually among us like we do just now. It does not exist because we sit on each other's lap in the same corridor, in the same building. And that is a truth we need to kind of hammer into the brain of all of us. And if we do so, I think the Arctic can be a thriving, strong region, which create opportunities. So after the Arctic 5, maybe we should have the Arctic 7 or whatever the number is, with who is located on permafrost at least a few hundred meters deep. That's another such subgroup that would be logical to fit, maybe. I don't know. But I'm really impressed by all this kind of understanding the need for bottom-up initiatives, using the energy that exists in people I see around this table. So thank you all. And this was not meant to close the conversation. We still have 4 minutes if somebody wants to speak up. And after that, I suggest Madeleine close.
If I may just very short notice, I'd like to thank Jana for really helping. That's amazing job. Let's just give a hand to Jana. I think you all felt this care.
Thank you very much.
And I also would like to thank, using this opportunity, our translator for the great job. Thank you.
Спасибо.
And I think, as for me, I'm very glad that despite this huge difference in time and geographic distance from each other, we had such a wonderful conversation and discussion. Thank you for your contribution, and I hope very much that we can develop this topic, which is really relevant now in trends. Despite, I agree fully that the ideas, initiatives should come from down, from the researchers, from the friendship of professors, and this is really the successful case of successful projects are being done because of the researchers. I think we have successful case of thematic networks within the University of the Arctic, where the scientific research and educational projects are being developed. And I think the sustainable goals development topic is really good opportunity to collaborate because in higher education system nowadays this topic is going to be very, very big topic. And I agree that we need our specific indicators for so Arctic-related indicators in this big topic. And thank you to you all. Maybe someone wants to add? If not, so then let me to wrap up our conversation. I'm very much thankful to Lars, who participated in several sessions of our forum. I know that other people also followed or took part in the sessions. We had about 50 events within this Northern Sustainable Development Forum, and today is the last day, the last main day of this event. And we would be very happy to get you next year, hopefully face-to-face and not online. But as you all mentioned, online is also has some profits. We had, because of this pandemic, actually the opportunity to follow many, many different and very useful events and sessions. So thank you again. Lars, can you add something at the end?
I think you have said everything good now, and I've spoken enough. Thank you all for staying up in the middle of the night, for spending your work days with us. Greetings to Arkhangelsk and North America and Bodø and northern Sweden and everywhere. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you too for moderating and organizing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
Stay healthy.
No, Chief.
Bye bye.